I'm John Schmidt. I'm a partner at Mayor Brown, a law firm in Chicago, but I'm delighted to be here in Amsterdam at the GAD conference, which brings together leaders of the global airport development world. And I'm particularly pleased to be here with George Casey, who is the president and CEO of Vantage Airport Group, one of the world's leading operators of airports, and very much a leader in bringing airport privatization and public-private partnerships involving airports into the United States. So it's great to be here with him.
Oh, thank you, John. It's great to be here.
You know, we go back to when we in Chicago were trying to privatize one of our two major airports.
Yes, when we had nothing else to do.
We spent a good part of time and had what we all thought was a wonderful deal, both for the city of Chicago and Vantage was the airport operator under the team that was selected. Unfortunately, we had a little problem. The financial markets of the world collapsed. We didn't anticipate that.
There was that.
There was that little problem, and so we didn't get that one done. But since then, we saw another U.S. airport privatized in San Juan, and Vantage is now very involved in other kinds of structures, not necessarily privatizing a whole airport, but investing in an airport.
And we're excited about that. And back to Midway, even though the transaction didn't close, we think we advanced the concept of privatization in our relationship with the city of Chicago, and in particular going through the FAA filing process, and again getting the FAA familiar with who we were as an international operator, but our understanding, given our experience, our understanding with the U.S. airport system, our familiarity with the airlines, the rates and charges methodology, and again working with entities like the FAA. But the transactions we're now seeing, we're actually quite excited about the success of Puerto Rico. We wish our competitors well in that. We think it serves as a good foundation, again, for building confidence and experience with people like the airlines or key stakeholders like the airlines, but also with the FAA. And we also commend the Port Authority in their process that they've undertaken to bring kind of private innovation and efficiency in to a complex project like LaGuardia. And so the Vantage-led consortium was fortunate enough to be chosen as preferred bidder. It's an active procurement, so I can talk in general terms about it, but we are working with all the key stakeholders, including the port and also the airlines now, to bring that one to fruition and to close as soon as possible. So we're encouraged by the interest that has created in the U.S. market, and we see other transactions like Denver. And what we like about those transactions too is they're interactive transactions. So they're not too prescriptive, and they're looking to involve the private sector in really forming the best solution going forward. And we think that is good, and it benefits the public sector with Vantage's experience in being able to work for the most successful solution. But our competitors too have a lot to offer. So we're encouraged. We can't say it's a flood.
Well, when we were doing the Midway deal, we thought, we're going to get this done, and then we're just going to see one airport after another privatized. I do think one place Midway helped enormously was with the airlines. We started out talking to the airlines even before you were involved, and I'll tell you at the outset, they weren't supportive, to put it mildly. I think they met with us out of politeness, and by the time we were ready to go forward, the biggest airline at Midway, Southwest Airlines, couldn't have been a stronger supporter. And by the time we got to the San Juan transaction, we had a whole group of airlines. We had JetBlue, we had Southwest, we had American, we had United, we had Delta, all supporting. So I think that's very important going forward with this market.
Couldn't agree with you more, John. I mean, we would reinforce your point that a key stakeholder is the airline at the airport, if it's a majority airline, but the group of airlines. And obviously they're very concerned about their operation. They're very concerned about the financial implications of this. They want to see the value added. They want to be a part of the ongoing dialogue in running the airport or delivering a large, complex capital improvement program. We agree with all those points. We think the success of an airport, I think we're hearing things at the conference today that reinforce that it must be, given the challenges that are facing airports now in a competitive environment, you have to engage with the airlines. You have to get them comfortable, and we think there is the pilot program in the U.S., and that probably has its role, but we also are encouraged by these hybrid transactions like LaGuardia and Denver that involve key stakeholders but have their own kind of way about them moving forward.
And the public entity is always going to be involved. That would have been true had we gone forward with the lease of Midway. And we were all realizing that. It isn't as though you turn an airport over to somebody. You're going to be there. You as a private operator want the city, in that case, there. And in Puerto Rico, they want the government of Puerto Rico there. And obviously with places like LaGuardia, you're going to be actively involved with the Port Authority. That's the nature of the airport.
I think I'd be very on firm ground by saying they envision being a very active participant in that process. And again, we encourage that because they have a vested interest in the success of the airport. We need things to conduct our business that they're involved in, decisions, permitting, things of that nature, but their perspective and insight is helpful too. And also as we're building, obviously political consensus, to have the Port Authority on side is very helpful. So again, that is not a concept that we would disagree with. In fact, we'd strongly reinforce that.
Well, we're hoping that as these conferences go on for future years, more and more of these conferences is going to be devoted to U.S. airports, because we're going to see more and more U.S. airport activities. And I really believe that's going to happen, and I think the people at this conference believe it. As you said at the outset, it hasn't been quite as fast as we expected, but all of the economic and operational and logical factors dictate it, really, and it's going to happen.
For us, as we look at markets, and in Vantage, in our experience with the 27 airports we've been involved in over the last 20 years, we've been in almost every region of the world, and when we look at those opportunities, obviously it's important for us that we can add value there in a number of ways. And we see the U.S. market and the potential for a company like Vantage and even others to add value in that marketplace, and also push the system to be even more competitive for the airlines, for the communities they serve as economic engines. And also when you look at airports trying to become global hubs, the trend is towards privatization offshore, and innovation and efficiency is brought to bear there, and we think there's opportunity for that in the United States without kind of disrupting the relationship with key stakeholders like the airlines.
Well, I think there's room for a lot of participants. Even other lawyers could get involved. But maybe we'll be back at a future GAD conference and talk again to some of the people watching this interview.
Thank you, John.